Mistakes, a word so broad and open, filled with so many different opinions and perspectives. For some, they might hate it, and some others might adore it. Some might associate it with defeat and failure, and some others might associate it with glory and victory. But despite all of the different opinions, they all can agree on one thing. Mistakes force you to be better. They force you to go back in time, to see what you did wrong, to see what you can improve. But what is a mistake? Why do we make them? Do we really need to make them? All of those questions and a bunch more questions will be answered in this talk. And by the end of it, I hope I might make you see mistake with different eyes. Okay, so let's get started. Starting by what is a mistake? Well, according to the Cambridge Dictionary, a mistake is something you did wrong or because of an action, a judgment, or a decision that came up with an unconventional or unwanted result. And according to my English teacher, this is not my physical teacher, this is an actual website. So according to my English teacher, an error is something that you did wrong for the first time because you lack the knowledge on how to do it. So these two words tend to get confused a lot because, yeah, they do have similar meanings, but they don't mean exactly the same thing. Let's put it into simpler words. An error is something that you did wrong because you didn't knew how to do it, or because it was the first time you did it and you couldn't do it correctly. And a mistake is something you have already done wrong and you did it again. So now let's move on to why do we make mistakes? And there are two aspects into one. The first one is the biological aspect, second one, psychological aspect. Let's start with the biological aspect. And the answer to why we make mistakes biologically is actually pretty simple. Because our head is basically blank. Yeah, it sounds weird, but it's true, and let me explain. When we are born, our brains basically come completely blind, with no knowledge. And throughout our lives, we keep adding more knowledge to our brain. So yeah, we come in blind. And let's go even deeper into our heads, into the neurons, and a specific reaction called the synapse. A synapse is essentially just an electrical impulse that travels between the neurons, triggering part of the brain so we can function normally. So, whenever we are learning something or whenever we did a mistake, a synapse fires up, traveling throughout our brain until it eventually leads the cerebrum, which is the learning part of the brain. When it triggers it, we start learning even more stuff. And if you still believe you're dumb, don't worry about it. Even ourselves make mistakes. Yes, it has been proven that some proteins that we produce in our body have made mistakes in the past. Essentially, proteins are supposed to go into a certain chain of DNA or RNA or etc. And instead of the protein going to the actual chain it should be at, it goes to another one. So those were the biological aspects of why do we make mistakes. Now let's go to the psychological aspect, starting by curiosity, the driving force of human existence. Curiosity is what separates us from the rest of living beings. Is what sends us into this quest for endless knowledge that obviously forces us to make a lot of mistakes. Now, even though we do have a lot of thirst for knowledge, we still don't know what curiosity is. Really, scientists have been trying to find out what curiosity is for centuries, but with no result. So for now, we're stuck with a definition given by a certain William James in 1889, who defined curiosity as an impulse towards better cognition. Also, curiosity plays such an important part in our existence and is such a natural part of our biology that it can even help us spot mental illnesses. Now, let me explain. Whenever someone presents a lack of curiosity or a lack of thirst for knowledge, that is just a big red flag for mental illnesses such as depression or anxiety. And the second psychological aspect to why do we make mistakes is perfectionism. It's quite ironic. We make mistakes in order to never make them again. So far, I have answered what is a mistake, why do we make them, the biological and psychological aspects behind why we make mistakes, but a doubt still remains. Why do we repeat mistakes so much? Well, the answer is simpler than you expect. Our brain is constantly working non-stop to ensure that we function correctly. So, whenever we are doing an activity that we have done hundreds, if not thousands of times before, our brain sets itself automatically into an energy save mode when it's doing everything out of memory and not really putting attention into what is it doing. So it's very common and normal to have these dumb mistakes, like brushing your teeth right after you drank orange juice. And it's not your fault, it's just that you're pretty tired. Now, I would like to go back a little bit into perfectionism. Nowadays, being good at something is not good enough in our society. Now, it must be perfect. And that's not very good for us because perfectionism is a mental illness that makes you do stuff like this slide presentation, spotless, without a single mistake, which is not very good for our development because it will only halt you from getting good at anything else in your entire life. And on top of that, it will only help you develop illnesses such as depression, anxiety, and cardiac illnesses. After doing all of that research about mistakes, I wanted to see how important they are in our daily lives. So I tried to do four activities perfectly without a single mistake. The first activity I tried to do was to do a mathematics activity. The first time I did it with no mistake, completely perfect. But it took me 30 minutes to finish. The second time I did it with no limitations whatsoever. And it took me only 15 minutes, half the time, and exactly the same score. The second activity I did was to go outside and play some basketball. In 30 minutes, I only shot 33 shots, a very small amount, and I made 27 out of them. But by the end of it, I felt very limited and bored. I couldn't do what I wanted to do. I couldn't play like I wanted to play. Third activity I did was to try and write two paragraphs off of my research paper without making a single grammatical mistake. By the end of the task, it took me 2 hours and 42 minutes, but I had done it. The next day, I put a timer, 2 hours and 42 minutes, and I wanted to see how much time it would take me and how much I could do without as many limitations. By the time the timer hit zero, I had done 30% more work than the day prior. The fourth and last activity was to live a whole day of my life without making a single mistake. Not even in classes, not even when I went to the bathroom, not even when I ate, nothing. By the end of it, I was exhausted, so tired. My mind was completely blank. I couldn't believe I had just done. Each of the experiments had their own conclusions, like some of them were boring, some others were limiting, etc., etc. But they all agree on one thing. They were all a waste of time. Perfectionism is a waste of time. All that time I wasted trying to be perfect, I could have used it on trying to be better, on trying to make mistakes, learn from them, and improve off of it. After finishing the project that took an entire semester to finish, I come to one conclusion. Our whole world is made out of mistakes, or is a product of a mistake. Wherever you are standing at or sitting at, wherever you are seeing this or hearing this, wherever you're at, whoever you are, whoever is alongside you, whatever it is, all of it is a product of a mistake. We humans are made out of mistakes. Thank you for your attention.